The man convicted of more murders than any serial killer in American history.
The country's most prolific serial killers.
Serial killer.
Serial killer.
A suspected serial killer wanted in connection with a series of murders here in Los Angeles has been captured.
Never, Jeffrey! Jeffrey! I hate you!
From the mysterious calling card of a tube sock to targeting young girls and leaving their remains buried in a forest, some of the world's most brutal serial killers have managed to stay hidden from the spotlight. These killers operated in hidden areas, which gave them every chance to carry out the most gruesome acts, all while evading the authorities. So, let's dive into two of the most evil serial killers whom you've probably never heard of. A series of the most brutal unsolved murders happened in 1985 in remote areas near Mineral, Washington, located in Lewis and Pierce County. And with each new killing, things just kept getting progressively more disturbing. It began on August 10, 1985, when a couple set out from their Tacoma, Washington home for a weekend camping trip at Tule Lake in Pierce County. The couple, 27-year-old Stephen Harkins and his girlfriend, 42-year-old Ruth Cooper, were just headed out to have a good time. But when Monday rolled around, they didn't show up for work, and their families grew concerned and reported them missing. 4 days later, on August 14th, hikers who were exploring Pierce County stumbled upon Stephen Harkins' lifeless body, still inside his sleeping bag. He had a fatal gunshot wound to the head, and even their dog was found nearby, suffering the same fate. But things took an even more grisly turn on October 26th when a skull was uncovered at the end of 8th Avenue South, close to Hart's Lake, about 1.5 miles from where Harkins' body was found. Eventually, dental records confirmed that the skull belonged to the girlfriend. 2 days later, on October 28th, the rest of Ruth's body and her purse were found in the area, only 50 feet away from where her skull was found. Adding to the horror, a tube sock had been tied around her neck, which confirmed the ugly truth. The autopsy revealed that Ruth's death was due to homicidal violence, the facts later confirming a gunshot wound to the abdomen as the cause. However, this case was just the beginning. It soon turned out that this evasive killer had a type, and he was specifically targeting couples. On December 12, 1985, 36-year-old Mike Reimer and his 21-year-old girlfriend Diana Robertson and their 2-year-old daughter left their Tacoma home with a plan to hunt for a Christmas tree. Mike also worked as an animal trapper, so he was planning to check a few of his local traps. For them, it was just a typical day of errands and an adventure with the family. But soon, things would take an eerie turn. Later that evening, customers at a Kmart about 30 miles away in Spanaway found their 2-year-old, Crystal, standing outside of the store all by herself. She was in shock. And when asked where her mother was, Crystal claimed that she was in the trees. Despite extensive searches by both foot and air, there was no sign of Mike's 1982 red Plymouth pickup truck. Not until 2 months later, on February 18th, over 2 months after they vanished, Diana Robertson's body was found by a motorist near a logging road off Washington State Route 7. She was partially buried in snow, which made the search efforts quite challenging. After that, Mike's truck was found nearby. Inside, cops found a note on the dashboard that read, "I love you, Diana." Shockingly, Diana's mother confirmed that the handwriting belonged to Mike, and there were bloodstains on the truck seat. An autopsy revealed that Diana had been brutally stabbed 17 times. And like the case of Ruth Cooper before her, she had a tube sock tied around her neck. Now, with Mike missing, investigators suspected he might be involved in Diana's murder. Adding to their suspicion, everyone around Reimer and Robertson claimed that their relationship had been unstable. Plus, Reimer had been charged with domestic assault and malicious damage within the same year. Authorities thought that Reimer might have left their daughter at the Kmart, killed his girlfriend, and then tried to book it to who knows where. But here's the thing. They couldn't figure out what Mike's motives were to kill Diana. There were several theories. Some suggested that Mike might have been connected to the murders of Stephen Harkins and Ruth Cooper. Some suggested that Mike was innocent and could have been the victim of the same killer that took out Diana, Stephen, and Ruth. It's a story straight out of a top-selling crime thriller. But all of those theories were put to the test in March of 2011, when hikers stumbled upon a partial human skull that turned out to be Mike Reimer's. It was found not too far from where Diana's body was discovered back in 1986. Authorities couldn't determine how Mike died, but they suspected foul play. They ruled out a gunshot wound, but beyond that, it's all still one big mystery. Despite all efforts, to this day, the actual tube sock killer has still never been found. But if you think this case is terrible, wait till you hear the next one. This was the name given to a serial killer who terrorized Russia between 1997 and 2000 and ended up claiming the lives of 9 girls and 2 women in Barnaul and Barnovo. It all started when Yana Shalamova, an applicant to a local university, disappeared out of nowhere on June 7, 1998. Her body was found 1 week later in the Ob River, showing signs of strangulation. Just 10 days after Yana disappeared, another applicant named Galina Darina went missing. Her body, with injuries suggesting she was attacked with a sharp object, was found buried in the forest near Baranovo. During the search, the remains of an unidentified girl who had been murdered in 1997 were also uncovered. But if you think this sounds bad, wait till you hear what happens next. Things escalated in the summer of 1999 when 2 more university applicants disappeared, and one of them, Svetlana Operina, had been found dead in the Baranovo forest. The next year, between June and August 2000, 5 more girls vanished from Barnaul, and they were all last seen at the university. Despite extensive investigations and interviews with over 35,000 people, including students and staff, the killer was never found. Who was responsible for this mess? Witnesses described a man offering help with admissions, but despite creating a composite sketch and questioning suspects, including a university colleague, no one was ever charged. The mystery only deepened when 2 women, Valentina and Nina, vanished from the city in July. Then near the village of Yuzhny, the belongings of one of the missing girls were found, along with fresh graves in the local cemetery. And now, for the eerie part. All of these fresh graves were empty. In early October, a skeletonized female corpse was discovered near Baranovo, identified as Angela Burdakova. In the same month, the remains of several other victims were found. Over the following years, more bodies were also discovered. Psychiatrists tried to build a profile of the perpetrator, estimating him to be between 35 and 40 years old, married, with children, a car, and a job that allowed him to take extended absences. This is finally when suspects emerged in the case. In September 2000, a student from Altai State Technical University reached out to the local authorities and claiming that she had seen a suspicious man multiple times during exam season. They met at a market where he introduced himself as a dean from the Faculty of Economics, offering to help with admissions. It turns out this man was Alexander Anisimov, a 45-year-old with a history of trouble with the law, including hooliganism and theft. The cops started to keep a watchful eye on him. He was married with 3 kids and drove a VAZ 2109. Eventually, on October 27th, they arrested Alexander. When they searched his place, they found a stash with 2 axes, knives, a shotgun, a hunting rifle, bullets, and even handcuffs. At first, he denied ever stepping foot on the university grounds, but eventually, 11 students came forward saying he offered to help with their admissions. 3 days later, he wrote a confession, admitting to being involved in the disappearances and murders of 5 girls between June and August of 2000. But why did he do it? Well, according to him, it was nothing more than robbery. While he was behind bars, Alexander tried to take his life by hanging and failed. Then, on November 1st, during an investigation at a 9-story building where he was supposed to identify someone he sold the murdered girl's jewelry to, he jumped from the 8th floor. Astonishingly, after that, the murder stopped. But here's the thing, even years later, the former head of police department of Barnaul, Major General Nikolai Turbovets, was never convinced that Anisimov was the real man behind all these murders. Now, while it might be impossible to believe, another suspect emerged in May of 2023. Cops arrested a man named Vitaly Manishin, who almost immediately claimed that he was the man behind those student murders in Barnaul. Manishin claimed that he used his job as a veterinarian and director of a farm to lure female students under the guise of helping them get into the university. During questioning, he ended up confessing to 4 more murders from 1999 to 2000, including one of the victims linked to the Barnaul Maniac case. As of now, the authorities have Manishin in custody, and they're looking into whether or not there might be more victims out there. But officially, neither of these suspects has been charged, and considering the new emergence of a similar pattern of murders, the culprit responsible for the Barnaul murders may still be out there. And now for the top 5 serial killers in the United States who have never been caught.
21-year-old Joshua Sostak's body washed up in the Hudson River. Is he the latest victim of the Smiley Face Killers? The murders, they say, are staged to look like drownings. Each has been ruled accidental. Case closed.
Well, neighbors I talked to tonight say they're terrified after hearing news of a possible serial killer on the loose here in the area.
Say this man randomly stabbed 4 people walking alone. It makes you rethink.
The Austin Travis County medics have found a body in Lady Bird Lake.
From the Rainy Street Ripper, leaving a trail of terror in Austin, Texas, to the Little Rock serial stabber, striking fear into the hearts of Arkansas. These unseen monsters are the cause of death for hundreds of people across the nation. But they're not alone. The Chicago Strangler, the Gilgo Beach Killer, and the mysterious Smiley Face Killer all leave darkness in their wake. The only thing darker than their shadows are the killers themselves. The 80s and 90s saw a surge in serial killers in America, with the likes of Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer emerging in the States. In today's time, active serial killers aren't heard of that frequently. But what if I told you that some of them are actually still active in 2024? Here are the 5 most brutal serial killers who are still out there, terrorizing the masses with their mysteries. Number 5. The Rainy Street Ripper. In Austin, Texas, a mystery has unfolded around Lady Bird Lake. The first victim was 59-year-old Ricky Parks, a man who was pulled dead from the water on July 14, 2022. Since then, bodies have kept surfacing, one after another. The latest victim, a woman, was discovered on February 5, 2024, after a resident called 911. Her body was found 20 feet deep in the water. The police are hesitant to label it a serial killing spree, but here's the thing. They are also struggling with the body count that simply keeps rising, all while the police have no explanation to offer. While homicide detectives are on the case, they haven't confirmed foul play. With toxicology reports pending, most questions are unanswered at this point. But one theory prevails, that there's an unknown serial killer in Austin. And for the past year and a half, nobody has been able to catch him. Some people are pointing to a pattern, noting the disappearances of young men like Jason John, a 30-year-old who disappeared on February 5, 2023, only for his body to be pulled out of Lady Bird Lake a week later. A few weeks later, 33-year-old Jonathan Honey's body was also discovered in the same lake. Then, on March 5, 2023, the body of 40-year-old Clifton Axel was pulled out of the lake. And on April 15, 2023, 30-year-old John Christopher Hayes Clark was found dead in the same lake. When you look at the list of all the murders that have gone down in the last 1.5 years, you realize that all of the victims have been men between the ages of 20 and 40. However, with the most recent dead body belonging to a female, there's been a break in the trend. Without the evidence of foul play, the authorities have been left baffled by this mystery. But one thing's certain. Lady Bird Lake holds secrets, and until they're uncovered, the town's residents will continue to live in fear of the unknown. Number 4. Little Rock serial stabbings. In the town of Little Rock, Arkansas, 4 people were stabbed between 2020 and 2021, leaving behind nothing but questions. It all started in August 2020, when the town was shaken by the killing of Larry Eugene McChristian, a 64-year-old man who was initially reported missing. Later, he was discovered stabbed to death on a stranger's porch. Surveillance footage managed to capture parts of the attack, but the killer remained a mystery. With no leads, neighbors offered a hefty reward for information. When Larry was stabbed, it probably seemed like a lone killing. But shortly after, the narrative shifted. 62-year-old Jeff Welch was found dead with a neck wound on his porch. Initially deemed suspicious, an autopsy confirmed that it was a homicide. Months passed without incident until April 2021, when Deborah Walker faced a terrifying ordeal. Attacked on Pulaski Street, she miraculously survived 15 stab wounds, describing her assailant as a tall, slender, young black male. She provided vital information to the authorities, but that wasn't the end of it. Marlon Anthony Franklin was found stabbed to death nearby just a day later. With these events, police concluded that there was a single perpetrator behind all the attacks, all of which occurred between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. against lone pedestrians. Even though CCTV footage provided vital information about the killer, he has managed to evade the authorities to this day, and he is still roaming free, probably stalking his next victim. Number 3. The Chicago Strangler. From 1999 up to 2018, a wave of terrifyingly similar murders shook Chicago's south and west sides, leaving at least 50 women dead by strangulation. The killer, whom people have come to refer to as the Chicago Strangler, has not been found to this day and is still believed to be out there. But how did he kill? His victims, primarily black women, met their gruesome fates in a chillingly uniform manner. Dumped in alleys or abandoned buildings, they suffered brutal assaults, were beaten, or even set on fire. Angela Ford was the first victim in 1999, and she vanished after leaving to pick up her children's report cards. After that, Gwendolyn Williams, a beloved sister, met a similar fate in 2002. Teresa Bunn and Hazel Lewis both brutally murdered in 2007 within 48 hours of each other, representing a continuation of the same streak. The killings continued for 7 years until 2014, when they suddenly stopped, with no suspect in sight. Then, 3 years later in 2017, more bodies were discovered. While most believe that only one man is responsible for these crimes, here's the big mystery. Investigators have collected 21 DNA samples from the crime scenes, and every single time, the DNA has been different. On the other hand, another theory gives a real name to the Chicago Strangler: Darren Dion Van. This man strangled several women in Gary, Indiana, later dumping their bodies in abandoned buildings. He was eventually arrested in 2014 and admitted to the killings. However, no connection has been made between him and the 51 murders in Chicago. So, as of 2024, the Chicago Strangler is probably still out there, watching as the world tries and then fails to catch him. Number 2. The Gilgo Beach Killer. It all began in 2010 when authorities stumbled upon the very first human remains in this case. While searching for Shannon Gilbert, a 23-year-old from Jersey City who vanished in May 2010, police uncovered the body of 24-year-old Melissa Barthélemy wrapped in camouflage burlap. The discoveries didn't end there. Over the following days, the remains of Maureen Bernard Barnes, Amber Costello, and Megan Waterman were found scattered along Gilgo Beach. These women, all escorts who advertised on Craigslist, had vanished between 2007 and 2010. But the mystery deepened with each revelation. Barthélemy's family received eerie phone calls after her disappearance, with the caller confessing to her murder. These calls, though unsettling, became crucial in cracking the case. In 2011, the plot thickened as more remains surfaced. Jessica Taylor, an escort whose partial remains were previously discovered in Manorville in 2003, was identified among the victims. Additionally, the remains of a toddler, an unidentified Asian male, and another woman were found nearby. Fast forward to 2020, when Suffolk County Police released photos of a crucial clue, a black leather belt with the initials WH or HM. Then, in a breakthrough moment in this same year, Valerie Mack, missing for 2 decades, was identified as one of the victims through advanced DNA technology. In 2022, authorities formed a task force to crack the case wide open. Their pursuit led them to Rex Hoyerman, a suspect connected to some of the killings. Through meticulous surveillance and DNA analysis, investigators built a compelling case against Hoyerman, culminating in his arrest in 2023. But it's important to note that while Hoyerman has been deemed responsible for some of the killings, other similar killings remain unsolved. The suspect is yet to go through a trial, but in the depths of people's minds, they wonder if the real Gilgo Beach murderer is still free, roaming the streets of Long Island just like everyone else. Number 1. The Smiley Face Killer. In the 90s, a series of mysterious deaths began across 11 different states. In the decades that followed, at least 45 college-aged males have been killed in the exact same way. Each victim drowned after drinking heavily, leading to the speculation that something wasn't right with these deaths. But there was another similarity. Smiley face symbols were discovered near several of these drowning scenes. To explain this, the smiley face murder theory emerged, a hypothesis suggesting these drownings are not accidents, but the work of a serial killer or killers. Since 2008, criminal experts have speculated that these murders are the doing of a gang or domestic terrorists who target educated white males, often intoxicated after a night out. These predators snatch them, kill them, and then stage the scenes to resemble accidents, leaving behind only a sinister smiley face as their calling card. The similarities among the victims are too striking to ignore. Many of the victims had traces of date drugs in their system, suggesting they were rendered unconscious before they were killed. Plus, the victims shared common traits. They were young, white, athletic, and well-liked. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect is the condition of the bodies. Despite being missing for weeks, some corpses showed minimal decomposition, inconsistent with their time in the water. It meant that they had only been dead for a few days, suggesting that they weren't murdered immediately, but were first kidnapped and kept hostage for days. To this day, the Smiley Face Killer has not been caught, and even in 2024, all 45 of the killings have remained unsolved. And now for the 5 most brutal serial killers still at large. Number 5. The Rainbow Maniac. Between July 2007 and August 2008, something deeply sinister was happening in Pituras Park. 13 men were murdered in cold blood in the same park in Carapicuíba, Brazil. Soon, the place would become a hunting ground for a predator, infamously known as the Rainbow Maniac. Why the name? Well, because he didn't just kill random people. He targeted gay men between the ages of 20 and 40 with precision. All the victims, except for one, died of gunshot wounds. The odd one out died from ruthless blows to the head. The very first case emerged on July 4, 2007, and the last known murder occurred on March 15, 2009, of a gay man who was shot 12 times. As investigations continue, there are still no leads found, and authorities consider the possibility that the Rainbow Maniac might be one of them, a police officer. On December 10, 2008, there was a possibility of closing the case, as police arrested a retired state police sergeant, Jairo Francisco Franco, as a potential suspect. Witnesses stepped forward, talking about Franco's alleged involvement in the bloodshed that stained Pituras Park. One witness claimed that one night he saw Franco shoot a black gay man 12 times, while another said that Franco went to Pituras Park regularly to look for gay men to target. But these testimonies held no weight because there was no proof. Franco was eventually set free on August 23, 2011, leaving the community to struggle with unanswered questions, no one behind bars, and no justice. To this day, nobody knows who the Rainbow Maniac really is, and there are still no suspects. Number 4. The Ibadan Forest Serial Killers. Deep within the shadows of Nigeria's Oyo State lies a place forever etched in horror, the Ibadan Forest. Here, amidst the dense trees, stood a cluster of dilapidated buildings, empty shells to the unsuspecting eye. But on March 2, 2014, a search party of concerned motorcycle taxi drivers stumbled upon a horrifying truth. Their missing colleague fueled their search, leading them to the seemingly abandoned structures. What they found chilled their bones to the core. 23 survivors, clinging to life after enduring days of suffering. But the nightmare had only just begun. The forest floor held a grim story of its own. Countless decomposing bodies and scattered body parts painted a picture of unthinkable cruelty. The community called them ritualistic murders. Theories pointed towards affluent Nigerians, even politicians, seeking dark power through human sacrifice. Public outrage erupted, with accusations that the Oyo State Police had ignored a string of kidnappings, allowing this horror to fester. Survivors, forever scarred, recounted their capture, lured by promises of safety and prosperity by men posing as government officials. The masterminds behind this evil remains faceless, their cases unsolved. The buildings on the site have since been demolished and have been redeveloped into a school. The Ibadan forest serial killer, one person or many? Are they still out there? The answer remains unknown. What do you think? Number 3. The Monster of the Andes. His real name is Pedro Alonso Lopez, and it's known that he killed at least 110 people, likely as much as 300. But despite knowing who is responsible, this serial killer is still on the loose. But how? He was born in Colombia in 1948, the 7th of 13 children that were born to a prostitute. His childhood was filled with abuse, and soon it began to show in his behavior. In 1969, Pedro was sentenced to 7 years in prison for auto theft. But what happened next was the thing of nightmares. While behind bars, his 3 fellow inmates assaulted him. Pedro ended up killing them all and earned himself a 2-year extension on his sentence. Upon his release in 1978, Lopez began a journey across South America, claiming the lives of over 100 girls, mostly street children and indigenous tribeswomen. Lopez's reign of terror came to a brief halt when an indigenous tribe captured him in Peru after a failed attempt to abduct a young girl. Sadly, this wouldn't be the end. Lopez managed to escape and continue his killing spree, eluding the authorities as they chalked the surge in missing persons cases to human trafficking. It wasn't until the floodwaters of Ibadan, Ecuador, that the grim truth was revealed. The flood unearthed the remains of at least a dozen girls who had been reported missing. Lopez's arrest soon followed after another failed abduction attempt, and despite initially remaining silent, he would eventually confess to his crimes, boasting about his 300-plus murder spree across multiple countries. He was convicted and sentenced to only 16 years in Garcia Moreno prison. Lopez served his time but was released early in 1994 for good behavior, and his release was the beginning of another chilling chapter. In 1995, he was deported to Colombia, where they tried to convict him of murder, but he was declared insane and admitted to a psychiatric institution. In 1998, he was declared sane and bail was set for $50. After being set free, he asked his mother for his inheritance money, and then he found out she was poor, so he sold all of her things to people on the streets and then vanished. He has not been seen since, and is believed to be connected to a murder in 2002, with Interpol having issued warrants for his arrest. In Colombia, it is rumored and believed that he was murdered by a vigilante after his release. What do you think? Number 2. The Denov Maniac. This is the case of a Russian serial killer who terrorized the city of Cherepovets in Vologda Oblast by allegedly committing at least 7 murders between 2004 and 2007. The name stems from the killer's preferred location, an abandoned construction site on Danilovsky Street, where 3 of the murders occurred. The magnitude of the case was immense, with 18 volumes of investigation by 2008 and over 200 individuals interviewed. The city's mayor even offered a hefty reward of 500,000 rubles to anyone aiding in the capture of this elusive maniac. His first murder in February 2004, Marina Ostrovskaya, a 17-year-old girl who planned to visit the family of her fiancé, who served in the army and often wrote letters to her which he passed on through his parents. Leaving work for a lunch break at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Marina decided to take a shortcut. She went through a vacant lot on Danilovsky Street. However, Marina never made it to her destination. Her parents ran to the police, but investigators did not manage to find her. The girl disappeared without a trace. In August 2004, while the search for Marina was still going on, the body of a 19-year-old girl student, Irina Popova, was found in the Patinsky wasteland, having been abused and strangled. The sinister pattern continued. 22-year-old Tatiana Baiva, 17-year-old Tatiana Maximova, 31-year-old Ludmila Miroshnichenko, and 19-year-old Svetlana Stepanova. Between 2004 and 2005, all died in a similar manner. The last confirmed killing was of 17-year-old Natalia Zakalova on June 11, 2007. But the Danilovsky maniac was suspected of several more murders even after this. It is believed he was involved in a 2010 murder in Vologda and again in 2011 in Cheropovets. Despite investigations, the perpetrator remains at large. Law enforcement speculates that if alive, he could be between 58 and 73 years old. To this day, nobody knows where the Denov Maniac is. Some believe that he could have died by now. Others think he may still be out there. Some think he was let go by the police in 2008 when a Cheropovets resident caused a stir in the community when he dragged 2 girls into the bushes. The attacker was detained and charged for murder of his girlfriend, but DNA evidence was inconclusive and not tied to the other murders. Do you think this was the Denov Maniac? Number 1. The Vending Machine Killer. Japan's fascination with vending machines is widely recognized, with there being 5 million of them scattered across the country. There is one vending machine for every 23 people. They dispense anything from ice cream, rice, cameras, noodles, tea, alcohol, and even toiletries like shampoo. But between April and November 1985 in Hiroshima, this convenience turned deadly. On April 30th, 1985, a 45-year-old truck driver from Hiroshima purchased a drink from a vending machine. As his drink was being dispensed, he noticed a new bottle of Oranaman C sitting atop a machine. So he snatched it up and drank it. 1 month later, he was dead. An analysis of his vomit showed traces of paraquat, a deadly weed killer that's banned in 32 countries, and as a chemical that had been used by over 1,400 people in Japan in 1984 to end their own lives. An investigation was opened after several deaths, and it revealed a disturbing connection. Most of the victims recently drank Oranaman C, which was a popular drink. And at the time, Oranaman C was being promoted to the public by the Otsuka pharmaceutical company. Coincidentally, the company had just launched a promotional campaign offering free bottles of Oranaman C from vending machines with each purchase. In Japanese culture, it's not uncommon for people to leave unwanted drinks on top of vending machines for others to take. This innocent courtesy cost 12 people their lives due to paraquat poisoning, while another 35 suffered severe injuries. To give you a better understanding of the effects of paraquat, even on the surface of the skin, exposure causes severe irritation, with blistering and erosion of the skin. Basically, it causes chemical burns. But when it's consumed, death is certain and agonizing, because it causes rapid inflammation of tissue surrounding major blood vessels and airways, and it literally burns holes through the victim's throat. There is no antidote. It was clear at this point that someone had been tampering with Oranaman C bottles, lacing them with paraquat, and putting them on top of vending machines. Despite exhaustive efforts from law enforcement, the person responsible for these acts managed to evade capture, and to this day, his or her influence still lingers. Copycats had emerged, spreading to Tokyo and central Japan. But still, there is not one single suspect for any of the murders. What cases did I miss? Let me know in the comments. Before you go, remember to slash that subscribe button like Wolverine's claws into a Deadpool meat suit. And before you go, stop on my channel and check out one of my other videos. We put a lot of time and energy into these, and you won't be disappointed. We have everything from Nikola Tesla's mysterious inventions and conspiracies, to the Ninja Turtles' origins and history in video games, to the OceanGate scandal, to the existence of aliens in space and nuclear isomers, and even the WWE. Come on, just stop by and check out a video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.